I've been teaching for 5 years now. The very first year I taught 5th grade, and honestly, I was so adamant about getting all those TEKs taught that I didn't really give them enough time. And I started doing a lot of research that summer after my first year, and everything that I read said independent reading. That's all your kids need to show growth. And so the second year going back, I did that exactly. I went out to the public library. My old school didn't have a lot of books, so I checked out a bunch of books that I knew were for that grade level, and I started bringing them in. And I noticed that these kids were just flocking to those books. So I started really looking at lists by grade level, and then the Texas Bluebonnet list too, of those really, interesting, awesome books. And so I just started noticing how, my books were flying off the shelf and they were picking them up when before I almost felt like I had to force it on them. At the beginning of the school year, I really try to give them lots of choices in the books that they read. So as soon as they come in the first day, there's a bucket full of books in the middle. I try to start noticing kind of informally what they're interested in so that I can pull out other books that, will connect to whatever they're reading. I also like to track their stamina as a class. So I'll have a graph where I track all 3 of my classes and almost make it kind of like a competition to where I try to push them every day to read, a little longer, just so that they can see that the more that they push themselves, the stronger they're getting at their reading. Alrighty guys, so before you go back to your desks, let me just remind you again what we went over today. Whenever you get to any unknown words, remember our strategy. You need to look in the word, try to break it apart. Are there suffixes, prefixes, root words that you know of? If not, can I maybe look around the word? Are there clues around that word that could help me figure out the meaning of the unknown word? Make sure you're trying that on your own today, because we know that as readers, whenever we get to new words, we can't just skip over them. We need to do our best to figure them out. We ready? All right. So again, as soon as you hear the melody, go ahead and go back to your desk and get started right away. Hi, Haiti. I started noticing that I could make connections with them personally, but also really get to know them as readers by conferring. So I would gather data from what I would see right after my mini lessons. So I would notice that a couple of them would not be very sure. Let's say I was teaching a lesson on figuring out the meaning of unfamiliar words. As I would walk around to the tables, I would notice a couple of them struggling. So I would go to them and I would spend that one time or that block just trying to get them to practice the strategy and really internalize it. So Haiti, what are you learning about so far?
About how on September 11, there was a lot of tragedies, a lot of deaths, and a lot of stuff happened because of 4 people and 4 planes, because they wanted to kill a lot of people. So they wanted to hijack planes and destroy buildings. So they did that, and there was a lot of deaths when they did it, and a lot of firefighters and police people died. So when that happened, they died because they wanted to help the people inside the buildings get out so they would survive, but not a lot of them got out in time. So when
I'm hearing a whole lot of learning so far, huh? Can I possibly get you to read to me a little bit out loud? Why don't you start right here on that first word all the way to the end?
On September 11, 2001, at 8:46 a.m., a hijacked jet flew into the North Tower on the World Trade Center in New York City. A second jet slammed into the South Tower at 9:03 a.m. The hijackers' targets have been chosen carefully. The towers had been symbols of American wealth. Next would come an attack against a symbol of the American government.
Wow, it's a whole lot of interesting information. Haiti, as you're reading this book, have you noticed any unfamiliar new words that you've run into?
Hijacked.
Oh, can you show me where you found that word?
Right here.
Huh, so remember that strategy we just spoke about during our lesson? Let's try that strategy. Remember what it was? What do we do when we've come to an unfamiliar word? Where do you look first?
We look probably where they would because it's like bolded. So they'll probably put it in the back.
Oh, so the glossary would be a great place. I also wanted to remind you of our lesson. Sometimes we can look in the word and see if maybe there's prefixes or suffixes. And if that doesn't work, what do we do? Where do we look?
The glossary?
The glossary, or we can look around the word. So let's try that first. Let's try to look around. And then if that doesn't help, we can definitely go to that text feature, look at the glossary. So let's see. So on September 11, 2001, at 8:46 a.m., a hijacked jet flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. A hijacked jet. Any idea what that could mean?
Like they take control over?
Oh, to take control. How did you figure that out, Haiti?
Because why would they want to like make a jet fly into the building? Maybe there was like people that wanted to like burn it down or something.
Awesome. Very good job using that strategy. We can always, as readers though, just like you mentioned, let's double check in that glossary and let's see what we find. And I'm so glad you're remembering to use those text features. Remember, it's usually all the way in the back. All right, let's see. So what does that say?
Stolen or taken over.
Wow. Do you see how that almost exactly matched what you just told me from what you figured out in your reading? That's amazing, Haiti. So you're doing such a wonderful job. I'm just going to leave you here with a reminder. Anytime you come to an unfamiliar word, you're going to look in the word or look around. And of course, continue to use those awesome text features, okay? Good job, Haiti. Keep reading. I would write down one positive thing that they did. Let's say they used a great teacher voice to read, or they used a great storyteller voice. So I would give them their positive and then also like a little suggestion. You know, this is an area where I noticed you could use more growth, and I would have him try it and then continuing to move on with others. Hi, Maya. So what are you reading?
So far, I've been reading that Josie, she doesn't want Vanessa to know about their nightmare because the nightmare of the house, it looks just like Vanessa's house, and they don't want her to be like kind of like embarrassed and kind of like feel like, oh man, and doesn't want to be their friend.
Let me see the cover. Oh, The Collector. I've heard a lot of different people reading this book so far. So let me see here. Can I see your notes of your thinking?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't want Vanessa to know about their nightmare of a house. What made you think she doesn't want them to know about that nightmare?
Probably because if they let her know, they're gonna like go into like the woods where their grandma told them not to go.
Oh.
Because that's where I think the collector is. Because so far I've been discovering clues that the collector is a girl named Bailey, and she wants to kill them.
That's amazing. So you're putting together the clues that you've read so far in the beginning, and you've already inferred where you think that collector might be. That's awesome. That tells me that you're being a very strong reader. You're noticing those clues and putting them all together, making your inferences. Could you read a little bit for me, starting from right here all the way to the end?
I don't know, Anna said, but I hear them at night. They give me bad dreams. One time I dreamed about crash. Anne and Vanessa both jumped. I pretended to as well. What they didn't know was that I internally pushed my glass of milk off the table. It had shattered on the floor, spilling milk everywhere. I felt bad for breaking a glass and making a mess, but I would have felt much, much worse if Anna had given our dreams away. Vanessa was my friend, so it should have meant I could trust her with anything.
Awesome, thank you. So as I mentioned again, Maya, you're doing such a good job of collecting clues as a reader to make your inferences of what you think might be coming next. Can I make a suggestion to you that will make you even stronger? So one thing that I noticed when you're reading aloud to me, one thing we need to work on is that great voice as we're reading out loud with expression. Remember how we've talked about really trying to read like a storyteller? Can I give you an example and then you can try it right after me? So for example, instead of saying, what they didn't know was that I'd intentionally pushed my glass of milk. See how it's sounding almost robotic and choppy? Let's try it like this, like a storyteller. What they didn't know was that I'd intentionally pushed my glass of milk off of the table. It had shattered on the floor, spilling milk everywhere. Can you try it now for me? Go ahead and start.
What they didn't know was that I intentionally pushed my glass of milk off the table. It had shattered on the floor, spilling milk everywhere.
Awesome. Do you see how when we read like a storyteller, it almost like activates your brain too? It makes you pay so much more attention to what you're reading, and it makes it a lot more exciting for you as a reader. So for you, I'm going to make sure that I leave you with a little note here. Remember to read with a storyteller voice to make sure that we are truly reading our books out loud in an exciting way, okay? Good job, Maya. Go ahead and keep going. What we do in class to keep all students accountable is we track a lot of their progress in writing, so either on Post-it notes or in their journal. I like to sometimes give them sentence stems that connect to the mini lesson so that they can share, whether it was character traits that day, so they can apply it to their own independent reading and show their thinking in their journal, on their Post-its. And then later I can actually go back and see exactly what they were thinking that day connected to their reading. Choice is super important for independent reading and just making it just natural. I will read with them sometimes in the morning. I'll pull out my own book and they'll see me in person reading as they're reading as well. So they can see, that reading is something that we all do. It's a natural thing and it's enjoyable.